Hello, salut, buongiorno, and welcome to another episode of the Traveler's Haven podcast series, where we will be looking at all things true travel professionals need to hear. Once again, I'm Sam, and I'll be your host. In our last episode, we were joined by Nurse Ophelia to celebrate Nurse Month. But as we move out of May and Nurse Month comes to a close, I'd like to spend just a little more time celebrating and thanking our healthcare workers for being so diligent. For that, we are joined today by travel nurse, content creator, and event creative director, Nurse Roseline. How's it going?
Hi, um, it's going okay. I'm really excited to be here. I think travel nurses our voices need to be heard a lot more because a lot of times people query and question what we do. So this is a really great platform and I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm very excited to have you. So, Nurse Roseline came to Canada by herself at the age of 17. She single handedly worked to graduate from Ryerson University and pass the licensure examination, and is now a fully fledged registered nurse. A travel nurse that shares her experiences with her followers, Nurse Roseline is a storyteller that embodies the traits of all the best nurses. So we have a couple questions. You can go through them at your pace. Feel free to take as long as you want to answer or take as short as you want to answer. But yeah,
Okay.
what initially motivated you to become a travel nurse?
I would say the most important thing for me was the freedom that comes with travel nursing, the freedom to do what it is that I want at my own pace, the freedom to work and to explore the country where I do what I love.
Okay, yeah, yeah. And do you get to explore it as much as you went into it for, or do you find it's a little different?
Very different. So that's another thing that comes with the job. I find like it's very different from what I expected. Some aspect of it is way better than I expected, but some aspect of it is very different. So, for example, traveling to a new city, it's a lot more than exploring because you're going to be working there. It has a lot to do with learning the people, learning the things they like, trying to communicate differently from you would naturally or originally do in a different city or in an urban city than a rural city. So my perspective did change a lot, but um, to round up, the experience in itself has been great. The freedom to go to places that I would not normally go to work has been amazing.
Okay, and so one of those challenges is adapting to the hospital environments in the towns that you go to. Do you have any strategies that you have that you sort of follow to quickly go through the process of getting used to everything?
Absolutely. I think the most important strategy is to be open minded. You would be surprised how different people are or how different hospitals are when you start. So I always go in open mindedly. I never go in with the assumption that I know what it is that I'm going to expect. And I always ask questions. People are very open to answering you when you ask questions. So I ask people questions. I'll ask them directly, what is it that you would expect from me as a travel nurse? I worked in a different hospital. I'm coming with my own experience and my own expertise that is very different from what you guys do here. It's similar, but very different still. So open-mindedness, ask questions, and just be ready to learn, basically.
Yeah, yeah, I would say that is probably the best thing that you can have in mind is just be open to whatever comes your way.
Yes, absolutely.
Is there a particularly rewarding or memorable experience from one of your assignments that you remember, one that really stands out from the rest?
Yes. I think this is very general, but in terms of travel nursing, I think come the most rewarding thing for me is starting the platform that I currently have. So before travel nursing, I had a platform, but it was very different. So travel nursing showed me the need to fill that space that I couldn't find. So before I started travel nursing, I went online. I was trying to find travel nursing videos for nurses in Canada. So that was really hard for me to find, especially when it had to do with people of color. So it's very different just because understanding the accent, the going to a new place that doesn't usually have people of color come there is very different. So building that platform and getting people message me, your video really helped me. It gave me a perspective to what it is that I can achieve, even if I'm not from there. I never thought that this was something that was possible for me. So that platform and that experience it's just rewarding finding out that I'm helping people achieve what it is that they never thought was possible.
Okay, yeah. Yeah. And your platform, you have it on Instagram, I know. And what's your upload schedule look like and how do you stay on top of everything for it?
I don't. I don't stay on top of it. It's still a struggle for me. But recently, in the past 2 months, I've been on schedule only because I hired someone to do my editing for me. And the reason for that is I find that because I do work a lot when I go outside of town, because I usually don't have family members there. So I do a lot of working at the hospital and combining that emotional toll or that it's stressful most of the times with editing the videos. I find I was slacking behind. I would have people message me, what's next? We haven't seen you in 2 weeks. We haven't seen you in 3 weeks. So, with that being said, I've been able to hire somebody to do my editing for me. So, sometimes I do bulk content creating, and when I'm telling stories, I give it to my editor. He does the video. I do schedule my content for Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So, I try to post 3 times a week. So that's where I am now with my content creating. It's so much easier having someone do the bulk of the work for me. I still edit some of my videos, but not having to do every single thing takes the load away from me.
No, I can imagine that would probably help the organizing of it a lot, a lot. And on the same topic, for travel nursing, so how do you ensure a smooth transition between assignments in different locations?
Hmm. Again, it has to do with asking questions, doing your research. You cannot escape doing your research because most times you have to make sure that maybe the next place you're going has everything ready for you like the previous place. So and it starts with picking the right agency. So that is something that I find that is really important because your agency can make or break your assignment. Sometimes even being in the same assignment, two agencies or two people working with two different agencies never really have the same experience. So the first starts with doing your assignment, researching on these agencies. Most nurses talk about, like most nurses are open as to their experience with be working with an agency. For me, I think because I have a platform, I do have a lot of people that reach out to me when they've worked with a particular agency. And it's easy for me to ask questions and ask, what was your experience with this agency? Did you like it? And sometimes people have bad experience with an agency and you have a good experience. So it's more so understanding what the agency is offering you and seeing if that aligns with what you want for your contract and going with it. So when I find a good agency and I'm sure that at least the agency is going to give me what I want, I make sure that I do the research on the hospital because sometimes some hospitals the workload is very different. So doing my assignment, what is the workload like? What do the nurses that work here say about this hospital? So being prepared ahead of time absolutely changes the game. You don't want to walk into something and be like, I never expected this. Even with so much preparations, you still see things that you never thought or you never expected. So being as prepared as you can makes the shock a little better, if that makes sense.
No, that makes sense. Is there anything that you look for in agencies? Like, are there any green flags or red flags that really like stand out?
Absolutely. I think the green flags for me are transparency. The agencies, you can tell. You can tell when the agencies are transparent beforehand. So being transparent with the pay, the exact thing, the exact compensation for your work. That's one thing that is easy to spot. Being transparent with housing, that's a very big one too. Sometimes some agencies tell you, "Oh, we're not sure yet, but you should be staying here." You might be having a housemate. You might not be having. So those things is, do you know or you don't know? So being transparent from the get go. I'm not able to offer you a single housing. You're going to be sharing the house with two, three people. Then they give you the option to decide, am I okay with everything else, but then maybe not so much the housing? Regardless, I still go for contracts where sometimes I'm not extremely happy with the housing situation. It doesn't mean that I don't take them, right? But being transparent with me and giving me that opportunity to make my own decision is one thing that I really love and I appreciate from agencies. So things like that, transparency is the biggest one for me, and also being willing to stand up for me. So even when you apply for a contract, sometimes some agencies say things like, "We have no hand in this. It's all the hospital." That's a red flag for me, because if you're leaving everything to the hospital, it means sometimes the hospital may make a decision that affects your nurses, but because you want to be in good standing with the hospital, you don't see the need to defend your nurses. So that's a red flag for me. Saying something like that automatically tells me, hold up, are you telling me if the hospital wants to reduce my hours, regardless of the fact that I flew 10 hours into the city to work, are you going to defend me and say, based on the contract, it's supposed to be a full-time job? Or you're going to say the hospital makes all the decisions, we cannot do anything. So things like that. So transparency, green flag. Not being able to defend the nurses or leaving everything to the hospital to decide, red flag.
Okay. And I would most of the time, the housing, transportation, is that taken care of by the agencies, or do you sometimes have to step in and do it yourself?
So for me, this is a personal experience. Everybody has it very differently. I always go for contracts that cover it full time. I've never been to a contract where it wasn't covered. However, you do have a lot of agencies that do not cover housing. But I have had a time or multiple times where I've had to look for my own housing, regardless of the fact that I was offered housing. Does that make sense? So it is covered. I just did not like the housing that was provided for me for different reasons. Sometimes is unfortunately you cannot tell who the other nurse is going to be. And it's not even like it was an issue between us. Living with someone is very different. You have to be compatible living together. And unfortunately, you can't tell that beforehand. Maybe I am a nine person and I make all my phone calls at 12 midnight. And you're a morning person. I'm going to want to be comfortable and I'm going to want you to be comfortable. Or my case was the fact that I'm always filming videos. And because of my schedule, I like to have a single accommodation because, for example, if I was on a contract and my roommate had a night shift and she's trying to sleep, it might be hard to have this conversation right now, right?
Yep.
So for
Yep.
me, if I end up in a contract where I have to share, I might end up looking for my own accommodation just because I want the other person to be as comfortable as I want to be comfortable. So
Yeah. What about the housing itself? Are there any like factors in the house? So like I know sometimes that housing will provide laundry services, but sometimes they won't, or sometimes they'll have access to the kitchen, but sometimes they won't for that as well. So are there any sort of logistical things that you always make sure to get?
absolutely. Most times the houses usually have something that you're not happy about. So, for example, laundry, like you said, sometimes laundry is in a different building, or sometimes they provide you a kitchenette instead of a kitchen. And now two people have to share a kitchenette. But then you were told you were going to have a kitchen. So yeah, the houses always have something that maybe you're not comfortable with. But again, with travel nursing, that's the beauty of travel nursing. You get to adapt sometimes. For me, when I'm not able to adapt, I find something else. And that's always a struggle, especially in smaller cities. There's always a struggle finding houses. And by the way, that's why I love what you guys do with travel nursing houses because it's so beautiful. I don't know if you know this, but I reached out to you guys on one of my contracts, same, to find something because when I saw that, I was like, this is amazing. It kind of limits, the stress that goes into finding a house in a small city where you know nobody or you're not even sure if it's safe, you know? So I just thought to try that in there.
Okay, no, yeah, that's awesome because that is what we like try and work to help with is that housing is such a problem generally, but also for travel nurses. So just having some sort of mediary to help find the place is it helps the problem so much. At least I think so.
Absolutely. And sometimes I don't even think it has to do with only the housing itself, but even not wanting to do all of the work that comes with trying to find a place when you're not sure anything about the city. Having you guys at that as that middle ground where I trust that whatever I get from this place is going to be amazing. Not having to deal with landlords and not having to find all of these things by myself. Absolutely beautiful. I think what you guys are doing there is very helpful for travel nurses.
That's awesome. Actually, on the topic of landlords, I did want to know, was there ever a very bad case where you got housing and then got there and then it was just a bad experience all around?
No, not personally. Not personally. I have had cases where people reach out to me because of the same thing, and I do my homework pretty well. I'm very good at doing my homework. It doesn't mean that other people that experience that don't do their homework, but it just means like I've had people reach out to me on multiple occasions where housing was just absolutely ridiculous. But personally, I haven't had that experience.
Okay. Do you tend to look for more rural or like more urban placements? Because I know that earlier you said that finding housing in smaller cities can be a little bit troublesome. So do you stick within those boundaries?
Yes, I'm usually in rural communities. I think it's because that's where most of the need is. And I like to go where the need is, where I'm really needed. So, and I find usually in rural communities, they're short of nurses. So I usually gravitate towards rural communities, even if it's not intentionally, it just always happens that way for me.
Okay. And during your time there, like during your assignment, will you like get to know the people in the area really well, or does the work keep you so busy that you're sort of, confined to the hospital?
Yeah. I think that changes a lot with where you go. So, when I first started travel nursing, it was more so focusing on work itself. It was my intention to go explore. That's why I said I think I got shocked when I first started. I had to learn a lot in the hospital in itself that I ended up not having time to explore as much as I would love to. However, right now, I'm working less with every contract that I take just because I'm intentionally trying to be all round. The original reason as to why I started travel nursing and making sure that it is balanced. So now I do explore a lot more. I do meet a lot more of the people. I understand why they do the things they do because it is very different from urban cities. Why they choose to live the way they live, absolutely beautiful. You understand why people love nature better than being in cities where it's all technology and it's urban, like no little to no nature present.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think now I explore more, I get to know the people a little bit more, and that has changed over the years since I started travel nursing for sure.
Okay. Do you have a favorite place that you've ever gone, whether it was for the people or for like the landscape?
Landscape Manitoulin Island. It is beautiful. It's about 5 hours from Toronto. It's so beautiful, little current, and the water, the landscape, it's surrounded because it's an island, it's surrounded by water. The hiking trails, so beautiful. I would go there over and over again. It's just absolutely amazing. I think that's my best contract that I've been to, just for the landscape itself.
Okay. Okay. So,
And
oh, yeah, sorry. No, keep going.
I was just saying, for people, Newfoundland was beautiful.
Mm,
I think I met new people. I met my best, like I'm still connected to them even to this day. And I think I would go back there for the people, the friends that I made there. Like I would go visit.
okay. So obviously you've kept connections with people on your assignments. You've like stayed connected to them even afterwards.
Absolutely. That's the beauty of travel nursing for sure. I don't think anything would have made me have friends in Newfoundland and New Brunswick and all of these great places. I never had people there, but now I could pick up my phone and be like, "Oh, my friend from Newfoundland is calling me." So that is very beautiful. Meet people and keep great connections. Yeah.
No, I agree. That is probably the aspect of travel nursing that I think stands out to people the most is the exploration, the change. I would assume not that I am a travel nurse, but I would assume that is something that a lot of people probably hope to get out of it.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think it always happens that way, which is why I think these discussions are very important. I think that you go in with the expectation that that is all there is to travel nursing. But like I said, it took me 3 years to finally enjoy what it is that I'm talking about right now. The first couple of years, I did enjoy here and there, but just the change in itself is very different. Not being with the people you're used to, your family members, the friends have made in Ontario was very different for me. Now going outside and trying to make all of these connections again and trying to understand the hospital and understand what it is that I'm doing kind of took a toll on me. Right. But now when I talk about it, some people might think that their experience is different, but it's not. Like it might take you some time to get very comfortable. So
You talked a little bit about the expectations that people usually have going into travel nursing. And I was just wondering if you had any advice as to how they could maybe temper their expectations, how they could prepare themselves for what they're going to go through. Just what would you, if you could go back in time, do for yourself to like skip that 3 year sort of like upward battle?
yeah. I think I would set realistic expectations. And when I say these, I mean just like a balance, because having the freedom is good, but with freedom comes responsibility. And that says, like, that means you have to prioritize your own self. You have to do things like you have to schedule your times. You have to, it's different when you have like an employer doing a lot of these things for you. You're just in one place and you're just sitting. Now you have to do your taxes. Now you have to do your own transportation. You're always flying. Like these little things are different. And that usually hits people. So I would say just set realistic expectations. Be prepared for change. Always prepared, like always be ready that it's going to be different from what you think you know. And with that being said, I would just quickly throw in something that I think I've seen a lot of nurses, especially new nurses, do that might be a little bit hard for them to um you know, get into the groove of travel nursing. You have to have experience. And with experience, I mean, you really have to have the skills to do this nursing because nurses in rural areas wear a lot of hats. when I used to work in Toronto, we had different specialties. So you would have a respiratory therapist, you would have a physical therapist, you would have different specialties coming to make healthcare amazing. But in rural communities, you're the respiratory therapist, you're the physiotherapist, you're doing everything. So you have to have the experience. And sometimes it comes by just attending webinars, just learning on your own pace, learning, knowing what you don't know, and being able to learn what you don't know. So that's what I would say. I would say have the experience, make sure you know what you're doing, because you don't want to go to a place and put a patient's health at risk or a patient's life at risk because you're doing travel nursing. It is different. It is very different in rural communities. You don't have as much support as you have when you work in urban communities, for sure. So just be prepared that it's going to be changed. It's going to be a change. It's going to be different from what you know. It might take you time. It might take you time to be completely grounded in what it is that sometimes you know what you're doing. You just don't have the ability to do it independently yet. So it might take you some time to gather up the skills, fine line your skills, even if you already have the skills. And then the exciting part of travel nursing eventually kicks in, where you're more grounded now. You know what it is to expect. You know who to what agency to go with and what agency not to go with. So that's what I would say. I think it's just fine lining your skills. Expect the unexpected. Be prepared. Have a backup plan. Things like that.
Okay, yeah. Yeah. Did you do travel nursing by yourself, or did you go into it with like a friend? I know you started by yourself, like by your own you know, pursuitment, but do you have any friends that now that you've made them and they're also travel nurses that you sort of like line things up, or is it not as organized to be able to do that?
Personally, when I started travel nursing, I took a friend with me. Did a contract together for the first couple months, and it was really beautiful because I had someone there with me. However, after that contract, we kind of went our separate ways, and not even intentionally. I think I left the contract before she did, and by the time she was ready, the part where I was working wasn't hiring. So we just never aligned anymore. But I do know people that started contract together, they end the contract together and they start another contract. So it is very possible to find a friend. And if you have that, I would say keep that. That is the most beautiful thing you can do for travel nursing. I think it's very important, like to have somebody that knows where you're coming from, that you could rely on. I didn't have that. I do have friends that I've met on multiple different contracts that we never intentionally worked on meeting together. So, but when we get there, it's like now I have a friend, and it's so different, and it's important because now we do things together, we explore the city together, we help each other on the floor. So no, I haven't really had someone that I travel with every time, but I've had friends that I've made along the way. And the thing about that is when you meet friends, finding your contract becomes easier because now you go based on recommendations. This was a very great place. I would absolutely do that again. Or I advise you to run for your life. Don't even go there. So that's what I think. I think that, yeah, for sure, if you have somebody, it's beautiful. But if you don't, you make friends there. You do meet people and you do make friends.
You brought something up and it actually sparked something. Your first assignment, can I know what your first assignment was like? Was it, I imagine it was pretty stressful and hard to grapple everything, your very first one, but what about like where were you? You said you were with a friend, just yeah.
Mhm. So my first assignment was in Ontario, but it was in Timmins, Ontario. So which was about an 8 hours drive from Toronto where I stay. So that was recommended to me by a friend actually. So I went to one of my friends, and I was talking about the fact that I was looking for a contract and I decided that I was going to start travel nursing. And she said, "Oh, I heard good things about this place. Would you like to try that?" And that's how she connected me with my very first agency, and she's heard good things about the agency. And then I spoke to my friend. I said, "I've started travel nursing. I know you're very scared, but I think if we do it together, it will be easier to transition." I said, "Okay, I'm going to think about it." And she thought about it and she said, "Okay, I'll come." And that's how we started together. So yeah, it was first in Timmins, Ontario, and that was the very first travel nursing contract I did.
Okay, was it difficult to get into the swing of things at first?
Um, it wasn't too bad. I got a lot of support from everybody around me in terms of I got my brother, my partner, like a lot of people drove down with me. I didn't have to do that by myself. So that's usually the big challenge. And they stayed with me for a couple of days. So it was easy to transition with some of the things. However, the hospital was very different. I found that the hospital I had to wear a lot more hats than I wore um in Toronto, because when I got there, usually we have, if something is going wrong with the patient, we have the respiratory therapist that's on speed dial. Here, they were never in the hospital. So this is just an example. So we would have them, they went home, like we would have them maybe up until 4 p.m. I'm like, okay, what happens to the patient after 4 p.m.? And it's you wear the hat after 4 p.m. So I think that little things like that I did find different. I wouldn't say that it was very hard. I think I was more excited at the beginning. I think it got harder after the first contract where reality set in. I'm like, okay, now I need to make sure that my skills are up to date. I need to make sure that I don't have to ask somebody for everything every single time. I need to make sure that even when I'm asking questions, I'm learning quickly, so I'm not asking the whole time. What is it that I can learn by myself that I don't have to wait to learn while I'm in the hospital? So little things like the reality starts kicking in because you want to be very competent. So regardless of the fact that you can ask questions, you want to make sure you ask. I don't think there's any question as a dumb question, but I do think that questions that can be answered independently
Hmm.
when you search. Really. Yeah.
Okay. And now, so first assignment, and now fast forward to right now, assignment that you're on, same question. How is it? Like especially comparatively to your first one? Obviously I'm gonna assume you feel a lot more confident in it, but if that's not true, let me know. How is it?
So one thing I didn't mention from the previous assignment, the first one was I felt the need to defend myself every single time. So an example is if someone were to say, "Oh, you put this here, it's not supposed to be there." So in maybe where I worked before, we did it the exact same way I did it. I would feel the need, like I felt attacked, so to say. I felt like, do they think I'm not smart? Like I felt scared. Like I didn't want anybody to think I wasn't good enough. I wasn't smart enough. Like, so I felt the need to say, "Hey, like this is how we do it." Like I was always over explaining myself and trying to make them see that I was a confident nurse or I was an excellent nurse, that I knew what I was doing. Fast forward to now, I think that's the huge difference. You cannot convince your way into people's heart thinking that you're smart or an excellent nurse, especially when people do it differently. You meet a nurse that's been a nurse for 30 years and she's in a rural community. It does not matter what you say. She thinks something is done a certain way, especially because it works for them. And sometimes it does work for them. So for me, now if someone comes to me and says, "Oh, this is not how we do it," I'm open. I'm like, "Okay, how do you do it?" Doesn't mean I'm going to do it that way, because at the end of the day, whatever I do for my patient, I want to be able to defend or have a reasoning behind why I did what I did, especially if it's patient care. So it doesn't mean I'm going to do it the way you want it, because if I have evidence based a reasoning why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm going to stick to that. But I'm more receptive. I'm more, oh, hey, this is the reason why I'm doing it that way. If it's not against your company's, like your hospital's policy, I would love to continue doing it this way. If you have an issue, we can talk. We can talk to the management and see if they still have an issue with that. But I'm not defensive. I'm like, okay, you do it that way, it works for you. I get it. But this is either, and sometimes I adjust. Sometimes they're both evidence based. You just decide to do it this way. Even if I've been doing it this way for the past couple of years, I'm like, you know what? There's no harm. They're both evidence based. I would adjust. So I think that's the huge difference for me right now. It's just not having to overly explain myself and not feeling incompetent just because some place does it in a different way.
Hmm. Okay. And where are you right now? Where is your current assignment?
I'm in Little Current. So I'm back to Manitoulin Island actually.
Okay.
Yeah. So I came, it's just too beautiful. I came back because it's the summer and it's always beautiful in the summer there. So that's another thing that I do. I try to gauge what I will be doing at that phase of my life and see where I think the best place for me to be at that time is. And the last couple summers, I've been places where I had to fly 4 hours plus to get to Toronto. So that always limited my time back home because obviously flying is not cheap when especially flying in between contracts. So the agencies cover the first time you're going there and the last time you're coming back. But anything in between, it's at the cost of the nurse. So now with summer, it's just 5 hours drive. I could just decide to come back home and just drive down. So
Mhm.
where I am currently.
And on a typical assignment, do you sort of get that feeling of like isolation or loneliness? Because if you're very far from family, right? Like, how often do you get to see them? Do you do phone calls to try and make up for it?
Yes, you learn to be very tech savvy. You learn to use every and anything, Instagram, TikTok, to kind of catch up with people, video call, video call, video call. That's pretty much what it is. You do feel very isolated, especially for someone like me. I always have people around. Like I love having people around. I'm almost always hosting something. So travel nursing was a big shock for me. I think it really changed my perspective of what being by yourself means and enjoying your own company. I had to entertain myself. So like I had to learn new things. I was never like someone that went hiking. I started hiking. So so yeah, definitely I felt lonely a lot. I still do sometimes. I still do. I don't think that really goes away if you don't have your family there. I don't know how other people see it, but for me, I don't think that changes because regardless of where you are, it is isolating, especially if you're used to the city where things are open till midnight and you go to a town and by 5 p.m. everything is closed, including the grocery store. So it's a huge change. It's something different. You're learning something new every day, but it doesn't get easier. You just try to manage it. And for me, it's just keeping in touch virtually, phone calls, video calls. And it's something that I was also used to. I think that was the biggest thing for me because I left home when I was 17 to Canada and I was by myself. So I really was intentional about building my community. So I did that. So having to leave again kind of brought back that feeling of being alone and building a community. But travel nursing is very different because when you finally build a community, it's time to leave. So it takes a while to build a community. But when you're like, yes, I got it. I got friends here. I got like people I could talk to. Guess what? Your contract is done in 2 weeks and you got to go again. So that is the difference with travel nursing for sure.
Okay. And so this is my last question. And I sort of asked a similar one earlier, but yeah, but we'll see. We'll see here. Do you have any tips or any advice that you would give to someone that is aspiring to be a travel nurse, but is
Mm-hmm.
maybe too afraid or not sure of themselves to go into it?
Yeah. Um, I would say, I think very similar to what I've said before, be open-minded. I will start with something very simple. It does give you a lot of flexibility. I currently run two businesses on the side, even with travel nursing. And you don't really get that with being a staff nurse. So if it is something that freedom means a lot to you, I think it's something to consider. Don't be scared because even staying in one place can be scary. So explore, ask questions. People are open to answering your questions. Ask questions, do your research before you go in. Once you do your research before you go in, most times you're usually good. And when you're in, ask questions. Once you are experienced in the field that you're looking to travel, you've got 90% covered. I think that's the biggest thing. Don't start something that you cannot defend. So don't go because you don't get trained in this hospital. You go in as an expert nurse that is going to help communities that don't have nurses. So once you're experienced, even if you don't have all the experience in the world, obviously you can be open to learn. People are open to teaching you. Just be able to give safe patient care. Once you're able to do that, you're good to go. You don't know. Trust me, there are a lot of things that you would not know until you get somewhere. Because even the hospital you're in, even if you work there for 30 years and you go to a different hospital, it is very different. The policies are different. The way people do things are very different. You would have to keep learning your entire life. So don't let fear hold you back. Make that decision, be experienced, do your research, pick a good agency, ask around, join groups, Facebook groups, people talk a lot. Or even before you go to a community, a tip that I usually use is on Facebook, go and see what people are saying about that hospital. It's just there's always something. Do your own research, then go in trusting yourself. Trust that you can handle whatever it is that travel nursing brings to your table. And that's it.
Hope that any aspiring nurses that are watching feel reassured by that.
I hope so too.
And with that, we'll bring the episode and Nurse Month to an official close. Be sure to go check out Nurse Rosaline's Instagram and support her in any way you can.
That's great. Thank you so much. And I hope everybody that is considering travel nursing has some answers to some questions that they've always had on their mind.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I hope so too. And yeah, remember, even though Nurse Month is over, always respect and care for those that care for you. Number one rule.
Okay. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, no problem. And so, I've been Sam. This has been Traveler's Haven, and I wish you safe travels.